Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to review the Monitor Audio Bronze 100 Bookshelf speaker. I've got it right here in front of me and on the screen behind me. They come in a few different color options, a little more than most, so make sure to check that out on the website. I'll link it in the description below. I'm going to take you through this review kind of like the same way we've done the last few, where I don't really get into the technicality too much. I'll just tell you about some standout features. I'll take you through the sound. I'll draw some comparisons to the Oyaide DBR62 as they're the same price, which is $600 for the pair. I'll get a little bit subjective towards the end, and I'll also tell you who I think this is for and who it's not for. So let's start with the features that stood out to me. So we've got a gold tweeter up top, pretty rare. You don't really see that too often. The grill covering it is kind of similar to the Oyaide debut reference. However, this one is plastic, so if you give it a push, it does bend in. Be careful. Moving on to the mid-bass driver, probably the most prominent standout feature being an 8-inch driver. You don't really see that too common in bookshelf speakers these days, and the surround is going to be inverted, kind of like the Kef Q line. There's no hardware on the front baffle, and that inverted surround does help give it a really clean look on the front. I really do like that. Speaking of hardware, there's actually only one bolt, and this is the, to me, the biggest standout feature. This bolt you see here is a single Allen key that goes through the cabinet, mounts to the back of that 8-inch mid-bass driver, and pulls it against the front baffle to secure it into place. Not only does this bolt serve to mount this driver into place, but it also serves to stiffen the cabinet as a whole. Hats off to Monitor Audio on that. That's kind of like a unique piece of engineering that is cool and effective in more ways than one. I love that. I've seen it on some of their other speakers that are a little bit more expensive, and it's really cool to see it on their cheaper budget speakers here. The only other standout feature I will say is, again, around back, their binding posts. You probably can't see them too well in this video, but Monitor Audio, I believe, makes their own binding posts. They're always just a little bit shorter and don't protrude out of the back of the speaker as much as other brands. I think that's a nice touch. Overall fit and finish is pretty good, a little bit nicer than the Elax, I would say. The vinyl wrap across the side is going to be matte, opposed to the more semi-gloss I generally see like the Elax again. I think the semi-gloss finish looks cheap, and the matte finish, while, you know, it doesn't look like a real wood veneer or anything, it's just one step up in my opinion. It does look nicer, I think, than the semi-gloss. Anyways, let's get into the sound. So the top end, the treble, it's going to be on the forward side of neutral. It's going to be a little bit bright. It's going to be on the sharper side with tons of sparkle, very open, tons of air, and very detailed. Unfortunately, it is not the most refined top end sound, but let's move down to the upper mid-range real quick. So the upper mid-range also is going to project forward into the room quite a bit. It's going to give you a sense of loudness and volume, much louder than you actually would have your volume knob set to with other speakers. So if you've got an affordable AVR, maybe that doesn't have a lot of power, keep listening. This might be up your alley. The mid-range in general is going to be a little bit on the lean, cool, and dry side, but still very open and very detailed. Vocals and dialogue are really good with this speaker, and the imaging is so good. And guys, that's whether you have room treatment or not. Down here I've got room treatment. I expect good imaging out of almost every speaker. Upstairs in my bedroom, I don't have any room treatment. I've just got a bunch of flat walls with nothing on them. The room's a box. It's as bad as it can get. I usually listen to speakers upstairs in my bedroom for about a week before I bring them down here to review them. And usually up there is no imaging to speak of. It's kind of just like sound, you know? These had a center image upstairs in my bedroom. So again, if you're, maybe in an apartment and, you can't accommodate room treatment or just don't think it's worth investing into, these might be up your alley. Let me think real quick if there's anything to talk about regarding the treble or mid-range. I've covered it. Let's move down to the mid-bass. The mid-bass is going to be very neutral. There's no mid-bass bump or bloat to speak of. I like that. Moving down to the bass in general, despite what you might think having an 8-inch driver, the bass overall is not exaggerated whatsoever. It's not bloated. It's not boomy. There's not too much of it. Honestly, there could be, I wish there was a little more. I wish there was a little more bass here. The bass quantity, I would say, is fairly average compared to most bookshelf speakers, but what you're going to get a ton of is extension. This was extending down to about 28 hertz in my room, which is very impressive for just any speaker really, at this price point. 28 hertz is low, and it did it with some authority, guys. So almost all of my listening impressions were done without a subwoofer, no adjustment to tone controls. I used the Oyaide VX SA3 amp for a while, then I switched to my reference components by Kinky Studio, and the bass was good. It was fairly articulate. I mean, it was like rhythmic. It was tonally nice. It was fairly detailed. And again, it extended low. I just wish there was a little bit more of it. And I gotta say, I think Monitor Audio kind of missed an opportunity here. With this 8-inch driver, they could have given the speaker so much more of that fuller sound. But instead, they chose to give it this like drier mid-range and this kind of more analytical top end, which to me seems like it's kind of going to be more catered overall. So let's get into who this is for, who it's not. I think this is for home theater enthusiasts. I really do. Hell, you can buy a matching center channel, floor standards, and a smaller version. This looks to be part of a home theater set, in my opinion. I don't think really music was the kind of primary focus here. I do think they could have done some things to make the music aspect of it more enjoyable. And I will say, if you're planning to buy these for music only at $600, I'm not sure they're worth the money. But if you're looking to buy these for a home theater environment or mixed system, I would say they're very much worth the money, because that sparkly top end that's forward and sharp and bright is going to be awesome for home theater. That upper mid-range that projects forward into the room is going to be awesome for home theater. That mid-range overall that is like very open, wide, and detailed, again, will be awesome for home theater. And that bass that extends for days, again, is going to be awesome for home theater. So I think you get my point here. Now, I do think this might fit the bill for some music systems in very specific circumstances. So pay attention, because you might be this type of person. Maybe you live in an apartment. You can't accommodate room treatment. You can't accommodate a subwoofer. You like the sound I've described so far. You like the idea of an open, detailed, and sharp sounding top end. You like a mid-range that projects forward into the room and gives you a sense of volume and loudness, even though it might be a little bit dry and thin sounding. You want bass extension because you can't maybe accommodate a subwoofer. This might really be for you then, honestly. My only gripe is, being as big as they are, they look a little bit funny on most speaker stands. Maybe that just takes some getting used to, though. I think these would be equally as good sitting on like a media console, honestly. So those are my impressions from top to bottom. Essentially, if these were an amplifier, they're kind of like, they sound like a Class D amp, traditional Class D amps, if you will. Let's move on to some comparisons. The ELAC DBR62, or debut reference, as some of you may know them by. That is another good speaker that is $600 for the pair. These are $600 for the pair. Those, I would say, the ELACs, are definitely designed for music, while these, I think, are definitely designed for home theater. And where the difference is going to be is the top end on the ELAC is going to be a lot more refined. It is also on the forward side of neutral like these guys. It is also a little bit bright like these guys. But the ELAC just has more refinement to it. And what do I mean by refinement? Because that's kind of like this esoteric phrase. When I say refinement, I'm talking about the speaker's ability to retrieve and give you the detail without any fatigue, shrillness, or being overly sharp sounding. Moving on to the upper mid-range, while these project forward into the room, the ELAC debut reference is more neutral in the upper mid-range. Moving down to the mid-range overall, while these are going to be really big, open, airy sounding while being a little bit dry, lean, and cool, the ELAC DBR62 by direct comparison is going to be a little bit tonally richer in that mid-range. They're going to have about equivalent vocal intelligibility and vocal performance. However, on the ELAC, the vocal performance is going to sound more true to life. With the Monitor Audio Bronze 100, it sounded like every singer was singing just in a frequency slightly higher than their natural voice. Like if I'm talking like this right now and you play me through the Monitor Audio Bronze 100, I go from sounding like this to sounding like this. It's just my frequency is a little bit higher up. I'm not as chesty, my voice isn't as deep, and so on. By the way, I'll be honest, I have no idea what that's going to sound like on camera. I did my best to like make my voice sound a little bit higher pitched, so if that was retarded, sorry. Anyways, whereas the DBR62's vocal performance, the singers are more like true to life, right? More textures. It's better overall for music, I would say. Moving on down to the bass, the ELAC DBR62 has a mid bass bump. This doesn't. This extends much lower than the ELAC. The ELAC is going to be punchier and tighter overall. Both of them sound good paired with a subwoofer. Both of them sound good without a subwoofer. But the ELAC, I would say, is going to sound best with a subwoofer because its bass quantity is a little bit on the low side, though it is very tonally pleasing and accurate. So there is your comparison. If you have any more questions about comparisons, ask in the comments below. Unfortunately, I can't listen to every speaker, guys. But if I've heard it, I'll kind of give you the comparison. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I've left out here, you know. Ultimately, you know, this is kind of like the Rebel M16 Concerta 2. It's another home theater speaker masquerading as a stereo speaker, and it's not. It's just not. That doesn't mean you can't use it as a stereo speaker. You totally can. You just got to make sure the sound signature is for you. And again, if you can't accommodate a subwoofer, this is a good option. It extends low and deep. So I think that's about as much as I could say about this speaker. So we're going to wrap it up, and until next time, later.